former president of the United States of America. On Friday, Judge Aileen Cannon announced that Donald Trump will be due in court on May 20th, 2024, to face 37 counts related to his alleged mishandling of classified documents. Now, you'll recall the Justice Department had asked for the trial to be held in early December of this year, while Trump's team requested that it be postponed until after the entirety of the 2024 election. So here, Judge Cannon appears to split the difference, writing in part this: the court rejects defendant's request to withhold setting a schedule now. Nevertheless, the government's proposed schedule is atypically accelerated and inconsistent with ensuring a fair trial. And news on the documents case comes as Trump awaits other possible charges for his alleged efforts to interfere in the 2020 election results. In a series of posts on Truth Social last night, the former president railed against prosecutors as well as President Joe Biden for what he falsely claims is election interference for the 2024 race. One message read in part this: do they understand the damage being done to America? It will only get worse. We must stop these monsters from further destroying our country. Trump also shared this ominous post, which read, "Nothing can stop what is coming. Nothing." If there was any doubt about the meaning behind that message, the user who initially posted it later retruthed himself, this time with a QAnon slogan as a hashtag directed at the so-called leader of the far-right group. And of course, some of this language, as we heard also in that radio interview at the very top, Sam, just invokes a lot of the ominous warnings of surrounded January 6th. We know what happened that day. Doesn't seem like Donald Trump's being particularly subtle here.
No, it's the same notes over and over again, same stuff that we heard prior to January 6th. Really ominous. Enough of it is vague that he can get away by saying he never actually incited what's to come. Yeah. But, you know, the trial date combined with the very likely fact that he will be the nominee means that sometime in the spring of 2024, we're going to have a tinderbox of a political situation, which is Trump's just coming out of the primary, victorious. This trial begins, maybe one of several trials on the horizon. And this type of messaging is only going to be amplified, right? Because he's going to say this is why you're doing this in the context of the election. You're trying to diminish my standing. This is the only thing you have going for you, and then we'll see where that goes. And you know, look, I don't know what you're hearing on the Hill or what you're hearing from the Justice Department, but I have to imagine that they read these things, they see these things. I mean, how do you respond internally? How do you respond to that if you are sitting there near Merrick Garland or anyone else who's involved in these types of prosecutions?
Well, the New York Times had a really interesting dive over the weekend about the budget that Jack Smith has said. It's around $25 million a year funneled direct just to Trump prosecutions, and in that amongst that pool of money, 1.9 million, I believe it is going to security for Merrick Garland and Secret Service detail because of the level of threats. It's clear that the former president hasn't changed his behavior in terms of, riling up his supporters in ways that can ultimately end in, as we all saw, really dangerous situations. But on the other side of the coin here, the Trump campaign is really in an unprecedented situation right now. I mean, has there ever been a presidential candidate that is simultaneously toggling multiple criminal investigations?
It's a rhetorical question.
While also campaigning to be the president of the United States and raising records amount of money that are in the same vein going to his legal bills. So it's really an unusual situation.
And we should note, Susan, that Trump, of course, last week said he received a target letter as part of the January 6th election interference investigation. There is some thought that the indictment could come as early as at some point this week. So that's going to be another moment where we already know. Put this May. I want you to talk about the trial date set there in May. It is, to Sam's point, probably coming out of the primaries at this moment. He's the front runner in the polls. He'll be the Republican nominee. It's in that window between the primaries and the conventions, and between when the general election really ramps up. And we may have the Republican standard bearer flying from courtroom to courtroom because there's a New York trial date set too. We've never been here before.
You know, there are the legal issues. First former president to face this kind of legal peril. There's the political issues. It seems to be so far helpful to him, not harmful to him, at least in getting the nomination. There's just the logistical issues, too. There are multiple trials that are going to be going on. Some of them will require his attendance. The judges are going to have to coordinate so that they don't have more than one trial date at the same time requiring his presence, not to mention the primaries in the campaign. I mean, to say that we've never been here before is to understate kind of the enormity. And I mean, there's almost a comic aspect when you look at the calendar for next year.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at May, for the Republican Party, this is kind of the worst case scenario, right? You have him having to go to court. Independents aren't going to like that. There are Republicans who aren't going to like that, to see all of that information coming out, to see him flying around the country, going to these different venues, talking to judges, maybe pleading the fifth, because it's hard to see how his lawyers allow him or want him to talk in these moments. And that is it's going to be too late to change anything. That man if he is a nominee at that point, he will be the nominee in November, and it is hard to see how the Republicans get out of this one. I think, I talked to some folks over this weekend. They said, well, we could, if things go really bad, we could try to flip it and try to get a new person like they tried to do they had an idea of in 2016 after the Access Hollywood tapes came out. But that is not going to work. I don't understand. I don't see, especially as these veiled threats, barely veiled threats, are working out. And if the Republican Party actually has the gall to do this at that point.
But Eugene, there's no sign the Republicans want to undo this, right?
Exactly.
I mean, one reason that this has strengthened his position in the party, not weakened, is because this is the direction that this Trump-defined Republican Party is heading, and not unhappily.
Yeah, and it's two different things. It may help him this year in the primaries. Could be very different in the general election. Certainly, the White House and the Biden re-election team is like, okay, if this is going to happen, we're going to step back and let it play out. Don't get in the way if he's self-destructing. But let's talk